During the Cold War, paranoia wasn't just a feeling, it was a national strategy. The United States and the Soviet Union, locked in a silent standoff, feared threats they could barely imagine, hidden behind classified budgets, code names, and locked doors. America built a web of secret programs designed to study, prepare for, and understand the terrifying frontier of biological warfare. One of these programs was so secret that most Americans wouldn't learn its name for decades. Welcome to Hidden UAs. This is episode 32, MK NAOMI, America's Cold War Biological Project. The story of MK NAOMI begins at Fort Detrick, Maryland, the nerve center for America's biological research. Here, scientists and military planners worked tirelessly to figure out how deadly pathogens might behave in a hypothetical war. This was the 1950s and 60s, a time when the world was still reeling from the new reality of nuclear weapons. Biological weapons were seen as the next terrifying frontier, one that demanded intense study, careful preparation, and absolute containment. It was in this environment of high-stakes science and geopolitical fear that MK NAOMI was born. Its mission was quiet, but critical, to support the CIA's technical operations, supplying them with the tools, materials, and specialized equipment needed for biological research and biodefense. Now, when you hear CIA and secret project together, your mind probably jumps to something sinister. But the documents that were finally declassified in the 1970s tell a different story. MK NAOMI wasn't a program for field experiments on unsuspecting citizens. Instead, its focus was far more logistical. It was about stockpiling biological agents, figuring out the safest ways to store them, designing specialized equipment, and getting the agency ready for worst-case scenarios. Think of it less as a weapon and more as a fire extinguisher. The secrecy wasn't about hiding wrongdoing. It was because everything related to Cold War biodefense was buried under layers of classification. To really get your head around MK NAOMI, you have to understand the Cold War mindset. It was an era fueled by suspicion. Intelligence agencies on both sides were driven by a fear of what their adversaries could do, long before they knew what they were actually doing. The United States knew the Soviet Union had a vast and sophisticated biological weapons program. That knowledge cast a long, dark shadow over American defense planning. MK NAOMI and other U.S. biodefense efforts grew directly out of that looming threat. It was a classic Cold War chess move, preparing a defense for a move you feared your opponent was about to make. MK NAOMI was a support unit operating under the CIA's Technical Services Division. This was the branch responsible for creating the gadgets and gear you see in spy movies, the tools of the trade for covert operations. Some of their projects were designed to disable enemy vehicles or equipment without causing casualties. Others were focused on creating defensive measures, like antidotes or protective gear. In a world where school kids were practicing duck and cover drills for nuclear war, the idea of preparing for a biological attack didn't seem far. It was just another part of the grim calculus of survival. The project worked hand in glove with the experts at Fort Detrick. They collaborated on everything from containment protocols to emergency destruction plans. The number one priority was ensuring that these dangerous materials never, ever fell into enemy hands. Imagine the pressure. You're handling some of the most lethal substances known to man, and you have to do it with technology that was primitive. By today's standards, there were no modern biosafety labs, no independent oversight committees, and none of the strict regulations that govern this kind of research today. The secrecy was a product of the times. Back then, nearly every Cold War project, whether offensive or defensive, was hidden from the public eye. So, what makes MK NAOMI so fascinating? It's not necessarily what it did, but how little was ever said about it. For years, it was a ghost. Its name didn't appear in newspapers or public records. It simply didn't exist for the average American. That all changed in the 1970s. As the Vietnam War wound down and the Watergate scandal eroded public trust in government, Congress launched a series of investigations into the intelligence community. The Church Committee, in particular, was tasked with digging into decades of secret CIA and FBI activities. It was during these hearings that the name MK NAOMI first surfaced in official, public records. But by then, the project was already history. MK NAOMI was officially terminated in 1970. In the years that followed, its remaining stockpiles of biological agents were systematically destroyed, a process carefully coordinated with Fort D. The world was changing. The United States was signing international treaties, like the Biological Weapons Convention, that banned the development, production, and stockpiling of these weapons. The national strategy was shifting away from a posture of potential retaliation and toward biodefense, medical countermeasures, and public health preparedness. The end of MK NAOMI wasn't dramatic. There was no big explosion, no last-minute showdown. It was a quiet, procedural, and administrative shutdown. Yet, its name lived on, becoming a symbol of an era defined by fear and secrecy. It became a piece of a much larger puzzle, a single tile in the vast mosaic of Cold War paranoia. Historians today look back on MK and NAOMI as part of this broader tapestry. During this time, nearly every major world power had some kind of biological research program, defensive stockpile, an emergency plan. Everyone was preparing for the worst. For some, MK NAOMI is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked government secrecy. For others, it as a revealing window into the anxieties of an age when the world genuinely feared that disease could be weaponized just as effectively as the atom. The CIA's own declassified files describe the program in dry, technical terms: equipment supply, safe storage, emergency protocols. But the public imagination has always filled in the gaps with thrilling and sometimes terrifying questions. Why was it so secret? What exactly did the government fear? And how many other Cold War programs like it are still classified, their stories waiting to be told? In reality, MK NAOMI represents a moment in history when the United States was forced to confront something deeply frightening: the possibility that its enemies could turn biology itself into a weapon. And so, out of that fear, it built a system designed not to attack, but to prepare. A hidden layer of national defense, born from the unique tensions of the Cold War. If you stand at the edges of Fort Detrick today, you can still feel the weight of that history. The labs are now modern, transparent, and regulated. Their work is focused on protecting public health and defending against biological threats, whether natural or man-made. But beneath that modern surface lies the memory of a time when the world's two superpowers were locked in a race to understand every possible threat, even those that were invisible to the naked eye, hiding in microscopic form. MK NAOMI wasn't a monster lurking in the shadows. It was a product of its time, a reflection of the fear, the secrecy, and the Cold War mindset that shaped an entire generation. And like so many other hidden chapters of American history, its story forces us to ask difficult questions about what our governments choose to hide, what they truly fear, and what they prepare for when they think nobody is watching. Thanks for joining us on this journey into America's hidden past. If you found this story fascinating, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Hidden US for more deep dives into the secrets that shaped our world. We'll see you in the next episode.